Hello again, everyone. My name's Kurt Conrad, and this is West 4th and Goal, a podcast for high school football fans in North Central Ohio. We're coming to you from the Ideal Works podcast studio on West 4th Street in downtown Mansfield. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Noah Jones. Noah, how are you?
I'm doing well. Great. We're both messing up. It's great to be here.
The third seat has kind of become a revolving door, Noah. We've had Zach Heiser's our usual number 3. We've had David Yoder. And this week we are fortunate enough to be joined by Grant Pepper, who's our sister publication, Knox Pages. He is made some time for us. And Grant, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I trust the trip up 13 from Mount Vernon was uneventful. Everything good.
Didn't see any aliens this time, so it was all good.
Grant, for a lot of you guys probably not real familiar with Grant's work. He graduated from Ohio Northern last spring. He was a member of Ohio Northern's basketball team. And Grant, for those of us who never played a sport at that level, what's that like?
Well, very quickly, it's not a whole lot different than high-level rec ball. I'm just kidding. It was a good experience. 4 years at any college level, I think, is tough. D3 gets a bad rap from guys like myself who really can't dunk very well, but I learned a lot.
Did you ever tour the football factory there in Ada?
Oh yeah, that's pretty much all there is to do there. So
for those of you who don't know it, the Wilson Football Factory, where the NFL footballs are made, is in Ada, Ohio, and I've never been through there, but it's always kind of been something I wanted to check out.
Well, to answer your question, actually, I never got to tour it because it's very much locked down. So that's right? A little-known fact is the NFL gets in there and does their commercial every year, and everyone freaks out, but I've never actually been in there, so it's kind of a mystery.
Top secret how the leather is made out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Top secret.
We got a really good show for you this week. I'm super excited to introduce this week's guest, but before we get there, let's take a minute to thank Andy McIntyre at Two Cousins Pizza. Two Cousins is the official pizza of West 4th and Goal, and by all accounts, we had the Stromboli tonight, and by all accounts, thumbs up, everyone?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we still have a little bit left, which I plan on crushing post-podcast.
And as always, thanks to everyone who has been downloading us. In 5 weeks, we've had more than 22,000, I think, at most recent check, Noah, 22,000 downloads.
Yeah.
In 5 weeks, that's
It's exciting for sure. I'm not going to give as good of a response as Amish Thunder might, but I'm excited by it, and it's keeping us going. So.
Right, those guys know a little bit more about that stuff, but nonetheless, we certainly appreciate everyone who has taken some time to listen to us. This week's guest is Lucas running back and linebacker Jeb Grover, and Jeb, thanks for coming down and joining us this week.
No problem. Thanks for letting me come up here and do this with you guys.
Oh, absolutely. The first time I saw Jeb play, I think it was week 6 of your freshman year. You guys were hosting Loudonville. It was right near the end of the half. They were lining up for a field goal, and it got blocked, and you picked it up and went 80 yards with it to the house. And then for whatever the reason, the officials got together and decided that they weren't going to count it, that an inadvertent whistle had blown. Just tell us a little bit about that. I mean, what do you remember about that?
It was probably one of the most crazy plays I've ever been a part of in high school. I remember someone blocked it, or it was a bad snap, and they blew the whistle, and my teammate Jacob Miller had the ball, and he was being wrapped up. So I told him he wasn't on the ground yet, so I went and took the ball from him and ran to the end zone, but they blew it dead, I guess, and brought it back. So it was pretty crazy, though.
But you guys ended up beating Loudonville, and that was the first time you'd done it for a while. And I mean, that kind of launched you guys on your way a little bit. For those of you who are not familiar with how this works, I mean, we don't have a producer who lines up guests for us, so we kind of go out and do that on our own. And I always go to the high school to talk to the coach just to clear everything with them. And I went to Lucas yesterday and was sitting in the parking lot waiting for practice to end, and cars just kept streaming in and streaming in and streaming in. I guess there was maybe a volleyball game or something last night. But my point is, it never fails to amaze me, the community support that you guys get down there. I mean, is that something you is that something you even notice? I mean, or is it, you got to be thrilled to death to look into the stands on Friday nights and have that many people there.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you notice. I mean, Us being such a small town, it is pretty cool how many people come and support not just football but every sport. I mean, I was at the volleyball game. They played Crestline, and it was pretty full in the gym. So it's just really cool how people come out and support us.
Another thing that struck me was that after your practice, it looked like the Pee Wee League was getting ready to practice, and I mean, the Pee Wee League at Lucas is thriving. I mean, did you come up through that? And I mean, how instrumental, I guess, was that in your development?
Yeah, I started playing Pee Wee, I think, when I was in 2nd grade. So I've been playing football for 10 years, and just to be able to get an early start when you're younger. I know some schools don't start tackle football until middle school.
Right.
And just the extra years of just learning how to form tackle and hold on the ball and getting to know your teammates it's really it's a huge benefit.
A lot of the same guys that you started with?
Yeah,
still?
definitely.
For those who don't know, Jeb's mother, Kathy, is the girls basketball coach down there. Your dad was a 4-sport athlete at Lucas. Lots of brothers and sisters who play sports. I mean, just what's it like growing up in a house that is that sports minded? I guess.
Pretty much everything we do is sports oriented. I mean, when I was younger, we all played rec ball. I traveled a little bit, and it's just we're always on the go. We're either watching someone play, we're playing ourselves, so we're traveling to watch someone play. But I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest.
Right. Who's the you got, 4 younger siblings? Is that right?
I have 3 younger sisters, and the youngest is my brother.
Okay. Who's the best athlete in the family?
Oh, it's definitely me. There's no doubt about that. I don't know. That's something we always fight about. We always harass each other about who's the best athlete. But we're all very gifted, so it's a blessing.
And Mom and Dad were both. I mean, Mom played basketball here at St. Peter's in Mansfield and played on some Final Four teams. I think I remember her telling me about. And I mean, that's you guys come by it honest, I guess. There's a lot of athleticism in the family.
Definitely.
Now, I don't know how much you know, or you may or may not know. I was talking to Coach Spittler a little bit about it. You're not too far away from becoming your school's career rushing leader. And that seems mind-boggling to me because I've been doing this for a long time, and I've covered some really good running backs down at Lucas. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, you played with Mason Galco, the guy whose record you're closing in on. He was a senior when you were a freshman. I remember talking to Mason in his senior year, and he said when he was a freshman, he was playing with Levi Harris and Nick Swainhart, who were guys who were both 1,000-yard backs, and he told me about how influential those guys were. I mean, did you learn a lot from Mason, and what was it like playing with him for that one season?
Yeah, I mean, Mason was probably one of the hardest runners I've ever seen. He wasn't didn't have blazing speed, but it took at least 3 or 4 of the other team to bring him down. And, I mean, just to watch him and to play with him, I definitely learned a lot. I mean, he was one of the great athletes to come through Lucas, definitely.
Does it seem kind of surreal that you're closing in on that mark? I
think it really is.
Coach Spittler told me last night that you were about 1,400 yards away, and that was before the season, and then you rushed for 900 yards in the first 3 weeks. So, I mean, that's it's not far around. I mean, it's not too far down the road here. I mean, is it something that kind of seems unbelievable for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had goals, but I mean, it's always just been a goal, and just to be this close, I'm just really blessed, and I'm just super happy with the way my career has gone. But I can't take all the credit. I've had great linemen in front of me my entire career, so that definitely helps a lot.
Right. Now, you were Lucas has been to the playoffs, I think, 4 years in a row. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised if you guys make it 5 this year. You were on a really good team as a freshman, but backing up even before that, when you were an 8th grader, I was a team that in 2014 that got to the playoffs, avenged a regular season loss to Plymouth in the first round, made it to the second round. I think Western Reserve was the team you played. It was a really, really cold night over at Orville. What do you remember? I mean, that's what I remember is how cold it was that night. But what do you remember that as an 8th grader? Do you remember watching that and thinking, man, I can't wait till it's my turn?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely got me really excited because it was just so close when I was in 8th grade. But I remember it was tied 34-34, and Ruben's getting ready to kick this field goal, and it went through as time expired, and our stand just empty. We all ran out into the field. It was really special.
Right. And then that following year, your freshman year, you come in, you're a starter from day one.
Yeah.
Did you ever expect to have that big of a role as a 14-year-old kid coming in? I mean, did you ever in a million years expect to be doing what you did?
Definitely not. I mean, I was hoping I'd have some effect, but I didn't expect to come in and start both ways as a freshman and have the impact that I did.
And that year, you guys, I think we were ranked number 2 in the state.
Yeah.
In Division 7. I'm not sure what week it is, but you guys go to Danville. They're ranked number 1 in the state. Things didn't work out for you that night. Nonetheless, I mean, to play in a game like that when you're that young, I mean, what was that? Was that kind of, was your head swimming a little bit?
Yeah,
I mean, is that pretty overwhelming?
I was just talking about it because it was just so. I remember walking in the stadium, and there's just, it's like 10 deep everywhere. It was crazy, but yeah, the game didn't go the way we wanted, but it was something I'll never forget. It was really cool.
And Grant, you got to cover it this year, and Lucas broke that long jinx. I mean, what's it like covering a game like that? It's pretty exciting, I would imagine.
Well, you kind of touched on it earlier, Kurt. Really impressed. Obviously, it was week 1, and you get good fan support anywhere in week 1. But Lucas especially, I usually try to get to games 45 minutes, an hour early to get coordinated and things like that.
Right.
And stands were getting full. And even though it was a much different game this year, obviously Lucas won 22-0. Danville down a little bit this year. Lucas is up, in my opinion. And, I remember there still being rows of people deep behind the fence, even though it was a different match. It was a week 1 matchup, a different kind of matchup this year. And even though those schools are about 45 minutes apart, it's kind of a cool rivalry that's carried on past. Now they're not in the same conference anymore. It's still here.
Right. And that game in 2015, I covered down in Danville, and I got there like 2 hours early, and there was already a line at the ticket gate. It was really something to behold. I mean, both those communities support their team so well.
Yeah.
Then later on that year, your freshman year, you guys get to the playoffs again. Not only get there, you win a first-round game. That sets up a second-round game against, Calvert?
Yeah, Tiffin Calvert.
One of the most exciting Lucas football games I've ever seen. I mean, Lucas, for those of you who know, I mean, Lucas is traditionally a running team, and on that night, Ruben Luna had a career night throwing the football. But I think they had come back and taken a lead, and you scored a really critical touchdown. I mean, you gave him the lead again there early in the fourth, and then I think Galco picked off a pass or he turned it for a touchdown. But I mean, what's it like playing in a regional semifinal game and then coming up with something like that?
I mean, I was really nervous. I was excited at the same time though, and I was just out there trying just to help survive.
Sure.
Play another game, and I mean, I caught a touchdown pass in the first half, and then I broke a kind of long run off. And then Mason picked that pass off, and we ended up winning. But it was just crazy. It was a great experience. It's hard to describe, really, honestly.
And then that following week, Macomb, and that was a rough night for you. That was a really good Macomb team, I remember. Nonetheless, I mean that's that's setting the bar pretty high for you and your classmates as freshmen. And there were more than just you, I think. I mean, there were some other guys. I mean, Lucas is kind of a small school program, so a lot of the freshmen have to contribute right away.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're prepared for, I guess? I mean, do you know that coming in that it's go time right away on Friday nights once you get into high school?
I mean, I think it depends year to year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think every year, except for this year, a freshman has had a significant role
Right.
on our team for the first 3 years I've been in. So you come in hoping to play, but when you do get that chance, the freshmen do a great job of stepping up and doing it well.
Right. I know Carson Hogger last year was a freshman, and he came in.
Or 2 years ago.
Was it? Yeah, excuse me. But he came in and contributed right away. And I mean, it happens frequently, I guess. Now you guys, the Mid-Buckeye, you're in the Mid-Buckeye Conference, but there's only a couple teams that play football in the Mid-Buckeye. Mansfield Christian, Mansfield St. Peter's, and Kidron Central Christian. None of them have football programs, so that makes you guys pretty much an independent for football.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to travel all over the place. How is that for you guys? I mean, is it frustrating to know that you got to take games wherever you can find them, and you driving down to the Ohio River to play teams and stuff like that? Is it tough for you guys?
I mean, it's tough. Long rides are never fun.
Right.
And the farthest we have to go was on 2.5 hours. It seems like a lot, but last year we had to go 3.5 hours to clear down the river. So, I mean, but we're just happy that we have 10 games, because sometimes when you're independent, you don't get 10 games. So we're just glad that we have a full schedule.
And this year it looks like about 8 of them are home games this year. Or
Yeah,
something.
7 of them. It's nice.
I would
Good way to
imagine
go
that's got to be kind of nice to stay at Bob Wine Field. It's a pretty neat atmosphere down there. I mean, that said, you end up having to play a lot of bigger schools. I mean, I was talking to Coach Spittler last night, and he said that not a lot of Division VII schools want to play you guys right now, just because where your program's at. And that's kind of takes its toll. I mean, when you're playing bigger schools, I mean, get injuries start to add up and stuff like that. And I mean, there's some guys nicked up. You got a little nicked up last week. I think Hogger's a little banged up right now. I mean, just playing those bigger schools, I mean, it's kind of like a mass unit down there. Does it take its toll on you guys?
Oh, yeah, but it definitely helps a lot because bigger schools have more kids, more athletes, more
Right.
speed compared to our smaller schools. So it definitely helps us when it comes to playoffs.
Right. And I was going to say the points. If you beat some of those bigger schools, the points are they add up for you guys.
Yeah, you get a lot of points.
And Noah, you're working on a story about this. I mean,
Yeah.
along those lines, the injury lines. I mean,
Well, so I would like to go back to one of the first maybe 5-minute talking points that we talked about, where you're talking about growing up doing peewee football and learning how to tackle. I never played football as a kid. My parents were both doctors, so we didn't believe in head trauma. But I was just wondering, because I know that there's been a lot of stuff since I graduated high school about helmet-to-helmet contact with tackling and stuff. Have you had to sort of relearn how to tackle properly, or to change with OHSAA rules?
Yeah, when I first started, it was always put your head in front. So if you don't knock him down, he has to run through your head to get past you. But now it's head behind. They're trying to take the head completely out of it. A lot of
Right.
it's getting close enough to step on their toes and wrapping up and then running your feet and not just flying in there trying to knock them out.
So how has that helped in terms of safety? And have you ever had any head trauma that you've experienced or anything like that?
Not through football, thankfully.
Okay, yeah,
Thankfully.
definitely. And I've been speaking. I spoke with the Plymouth football coach Mark Genders, who told me that he spoke with your head coach Scott Spittler about the Guardian caps, which you guys wear during practices only at the moment. How has that helped you feel more comfortable tackling, or at least reducing the amount of potential concussion hits?
Yeah, I mean, with like the NFL now and how the roughing the passer and how they're trying to make the game safer, it's definitely nice. It's good to see our school cares about us enough to try to prevent injuries like that cause long-term trauma. And so for them to do that, it shows that they really do care about us a lot.
Yeah, one thing that the Plymouth coach Mark Gender said to me was that he really felt like the Ohio high school rule makers, what is it?
OHSAA.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm can't keep up with my mouth. They've done a really great job of creating these rules that sort of reduce head trauma, and that most of the concussions that Genders saw come during 7-on-7s or scrimmages where you fall and hit your head against someone's knee or something. So it's not even necessarily tackling. Is that something that you've felt as well?
Yeah, like I always feel like after a 7-on-7, I'm more sore than after a real game because you fall on the ground a lot. I mean, there's not supposed to be contact, but there's always a lot of contact.
Right.
You don't have any pads or anything to protect you. So I can definitely see that there'd be more concussions in preseason than during the season.
Sure. And then my last question before I'll throw it back to you, Kurt. Last week we had Clay Matthews of the Packers get pretty much irate about a sack that was sort of flagged. I don't really remember exactly what the call was. It was roughing the passer, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And, he after the game said something like, this game is becoming way too soft or something, which, whatever you want to make out of that context, you can. But I've heard a lot of things about, Cade Stover, maybe off the air, said something about how football is going to be a different sport in 10 years. How do you feel about the rule changes sort of making an impact on the way that the game is being played?
Yeah, I agree with Cade about how it's going to be different if, heaven forbid, if they do still have high school football later on. But, the rule changes, it definitely affects how you play, like strategies and how you're taught to tackle, for instance. But it's, I don't know. It's just something that I'm glad they're trying to keep it safe, but it shouldn't take away from the game.
Right. It's all you, Kurt.
Right on. Thanks. And Grant, you can speak to this. I mean, if you've ever seen Lucas play, it's your offense, it kind of looks like a rugby scrum a little bit. I mean, how many plays are in the playbook down there? I mean, just talk a little bit about that offense. I mean, is it you're a big, strong, physical guy. Is it something you I would imagine you love it. You know, it's
Oh yeah.
you guys line up and try and smash it down someone's throat.
Yeah, of course I like it because I get the ball quite a bit. So, but we do have a lot of wrinkles in. We do spread it out. We're spreading out more. Spiller does a good job of keeping the defense on their toes, not knowing what to expect. We could be 4 wide, and then the next time we could be in our double tight, double wing. So, I mean, the offense, our Pee Wee runs it, middle school runs it, everyone runs it. It's the only thing I remember since middle school on. So, and he's doing a great job of
Is that under the direction of Spiller? Like,
Yes.
he wants them to do that?
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I talked to him a little bit yesterday about that, and he said, you know, some of these teams that, you know, that they play, Highland came up, Highland in the KMAC, and he said, you know, they have their system and they do what they do, and I was thinking that's Lucas too. I mean, you guys have a system. You've been, you know, you heard the same terminology since you were 8 years old. I would imagine that's kind of you're so used to it, and you just know it so well. I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it helps a lot, especially because if you're not running the same thing in middle school and you jump to high school, you have to relearn that system, and it affects reps. But when we already know it, so we can it's a lot smoother transition.
And Grant, you were probably a little surprised. I mean, it's hard to take pictures of
Oh,
from a journalism standpoint.
From a journalism standpoint, yes. I kind of want to ask, you know, and this is kind of that you mentioned Highland's almost the same way in some respects. You know, a lot of football now, at least there used to be a lot more offenses like yours, a lot more. You guys aren't completely wing T, but a lot more run heavy in the box attack. Now people pass the ball a little bit more. See a lot more spread high school football. What's it like? You know, first off, you kind of talked about what it's like being in that offense, but for high school kids to buy in that offense like you guys do is pretty special, and you guys are really good at it. How does Coach Spittler get that buy-in from you guys to kind of participate in offense, which might not look as, you know, aesthetically appealing as, you know, one you might see on TV on Sundays?
Well, I mean, for my class, we saw it works.
Yeah.
So that's what had us buy in, and it's continued to work. We made the playoffs. If we make it this year, it'll be 5 years in a row. So I think the success that we have had using it is what buys us in.
You guys also do some passing plays as the season progresses before playoff time too. So it's not like you guys are only going to run the football, right?
Yeah, I mean, last week Logan Nicewater threw for 200-something yards.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Touchdowns.
You
So,
can tell I haven't covered a game yet.
You guys, 3-2 through the first 5 weeks. Tough one last week against a Columbus Centennial team, and Centennial is a Division III school, and that's what Mansfield Senior is. I mean, that's the equivalent of what you guys were doing, is going up against athleticism like that. I mean, is that something that do you embrace that challenge, or is it like, oh man, we're gonna have our hands full with these guys because you beat them last year?
Yeah, they were much improved, a lot more disciplined, extremely fast. But I mean, when you go into a game like that, you have to be confident, or else they're just gonna wax you.
Right.
So I mean, and you always like taking on the underdog role. So
Sure.
that's also extra motivation.
And that's not going to change anytime in the immediate future.
No.
You got a couple of D4 schools coming up. For guys like me who follow this stuff, I mean, a guy out of Worcester named Drew Pastor has a really neat website, and he does a lot of mathematical stuff in terms of like running calculations on how many games. But one of the things that is on his site is he ranks each team by strength of schedule. And I think Lucas is one of the top 10 most difficult Division VII schedules. I mean, is that something you think about, or is it just line up and whoever's next is next?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to have that mindset.
Right.
I mean, Spit's thing this week is 1-0. Just go 1-0 this week, and next week we'll try to go 1-0 again. But I didn't even realize that our schedule was that tough until I think I heard it this past week, that we was like 7th, and since Danville's lost a couple games, we dropped down to 9th.
Right.
But out of 100-something Division VII schools, that's a tough schedule.
And Grant, Danville's got like the second ranked schedule. I mean, they're not, they're 0-5 right now, but they're not playing anyone who's soft by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, their non-conference is brutal. Obviously, they started with Lucas, and then trying to think after that. I mean, they've played. When you look at KMAC teams, most of them, East Knox is 5-0. Their first 5 components are opponents, their combined record is 2-23 right now. Danville is quite the opposite.
Right.
So yeah.
3-2 at the midway point. You guys are traditionally a playoff team or in the hunt. I guess what are your expectations here going forward here for the next 5 weeks?
We just gotta keep doing what we've been doing. Don't get too high, don't get too low, is what Coach Spittler says a lot. So we're just trying to take it 1 week at a time because you can't win all 5 in 1 week. So we're still at second in our region.
Right.
So even though we're 3-2, we're still second in our region.
Right.
So we're just trying to get into the playoffs because once you get into the playoffs, it's a completely new season.
And we've talked to it about just about every one of our guests, but I would imagine you're no different. You start as a freshman, all of a sudden it races by. I would imagine. Does it go by real fast? And is there a greater sense of urgency, I guess, this year than knowing that this is it for high school football?
Yeah, I remember when I was a freshman, the seniors talking about how fast it was, and I'm like, I got 3 more years, can't go that fast, and it's like I thought that last week. It's unbelievable how fast it goes, and with the sense of urgency, I've always played hard. I've always felt like I've worked hard, but it's just that much more because this is it. I'm down to 5 games left. Guaranteed.
Yeah, only 5 more guaranteed. That's got to be kind of eye-opening, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Right. Now, in terms of life after high school football, is it something you want to pursue at the college level? What are your plans beyond Lucas?
Yeah, I definitely would like to play college football or college baseball, depending on which path I decide to go.
Right. And you're also a member of a pretty good basketball team down at Lucas. You guys, it wasn't so long ago where things were not going real great. Coach Eisman has done a really good job. You guys, 14 wins 2 years ago? I think 15 wins last year.
Mm-hmm.
Is it exciting to be a part of getting that turn? The football program's been in a good spot for a long time, but it seems like in basketball, you're like part of a group that's kind of getting things turned around. Is that kind of neat to be in on the ground level, I guess, and rebuilding?
It's cool. I think freshman year we won 7, sophomore 14, last year 15, and we have high expectations this year definitely because we got a lot coming back. Some of our young contributors are a year older now. Logan Nice Wonders, a year older. Ethan Sauter, Riley Gossam, Goose Wallace, Carson Auger. So we're definitely excited.
And I would imagine, excuse me, but that was a district tournament the last few years. That was kind of Mansfield, St. Peter's. All those guys are gone. I would imagine you kind of feel like the door's open there a little bit in terms of maybe getting to the district and beyond.
Yeah, we're definitely hopeful. That's for sure. Colonel Crawford's should be good again. St. Pete's, though, they have that winning tradition, so who knows what they're going to bring to the table.
Sure. Well, good. I think we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll talk about what happened around the area last week, and we'll look forward to this week. So stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to West 4th and Goal. I'm Kurt Conrad, and we're here with Lucas's Jeb Grover. And Jeb, it was a kind of the Cubs took one on the chin last week. Let's start there. It was Columbus Centennial. Again, we talked about it. They were a D3 school. It was Centennial 51 and Lucas 36. Just tell us a little bit about. I think it's the most points that Lucas team has allowed since 2012. Just tell us a little bit about what went wrong last week.
Yeah, not take anything away from Centennial. They were a lot better than what they were last year. There are a ton of athletes everywhere, extremely fast. I was getting looked at, so I didn't see a whole lot of the game.
Right.
And but what I did see in the second half was we did not tackle very well.
Right.
I think they had 4 touchdowns for 40 yards or more, and a kickoff return for a touchdown.
And that just doesn't happen down your way. I've covered Lucas on and on and off, throughout the seasons, and they're generally not chunk plays you guys give up. If a team scores on you guys, you make them, drive the field. And to give up big chunk plays like that is unusual. It's kind of out of character.
Yeah, they had a speed that we have not seen yet this year. So tackling and more discipline on defense it's been a big thing this week for sure.
And you touched on it. a little dinged up last week, but shoulder's good to go, and you're back to 100%, and everything's all set.
Close to 100. Hopefully 100 by Friday.
Sure.
But it's looking a lot better than what it was last Friday.
Right on. I was at Norwalk, and it was Norwalk 49 and Shelby 0, and that doesn't happen. It hadn't happened.
Wow.
It hadn't happened to Shelby in a long time. I mean, that's granted they they graduated the greatest class in Shelby High School football history, but to give up that many points and Coach Eric Will was not thrilled afterward. He said, this is a product of the worst week of practice that we've ever had, and he said, if this continues, there's they'll go 0-5 the rest of the way here. So he was none too happy about that, and I don't blame him. And I would imagine things are a little different in practice up at Shelby this week. Grant, you made your way to Community Stadium in Ashland. It was Ashland 41 and Mount Vernon 13, and I think you came away pretty impressed with Mitch Heilman, the quarterback over there.
He's got an arm on him, and I'll say this. It was 6-6 at halftime.
Oh, wow.
Mount Vernon did a really good job in the first half of they stuck to Ashland's receiving core, and obviously Mitch can throw the ball pretty well deep. And so what Ashland realized at halftime is their coach saw it, and he said, look, Mitch, if no one's open, take off. And he's got the legs to do it, and he did in the second half. And Mount Vernon had to pick their poison.
Right.
And Mitch Heilman broke the open field, and then that opened up the passing game again, and it was over.
Right.
So.
And Mitch is someone who we want to try and get on here in the coming weeks. I don't know how much you know about Ashland High School football, but going back to the mid-2000s, they've had quarterback. I mean, it's a wide open system that they run, and it started with Taylor Housewright, and he was a guy who went on to become an All-American, Division II All-American at Ashland University. I mean, they have a quarterback like that, and you would think at some point you couldn't replace a quarterback like that, but they've been doing it every year for 10 years. It's really impressive. Clear Fork 44 and Buckeye Valley 0 last week, and the reason we bring that up is because Jared Schaefer, Clear Fork's quarterback, or the co-quarterback, I guess, because they kind of run a platoon system, but he was our guest last week, and that I think last week he threw for 3 or ran for 3, and I'm not exactly. He had a huge night. My point is this.
Well said.
It is there is no Sports Illustrated cover jinx with the West Fourth and Gold podcast. So, Jeb, you should be prepared to have yourself a night this week.
Hopefully, I'm hoping.
No pressure.
Yeah, and if things don't work out well, it's not our fault.
Right.
Maple Heights came to Arlen Field and beat Mansfield Senior 38-14. Senior High started 2-1. They're 2-3 now. That kind of segues us into this week because they will. They host Lexington this week in an Ohio Cardinal Conference game. I'm going to cover that. And Chioke's been on our show in the past. I'm sure things are not awesome at practice. The last few weeks here, they've lost a couple in a row, and I suspect they're going to get things turned around. It is, Jeb, you guys host. It's one of the few games where you actually get to play a school with the same size as you. You guys host Crestline this week without giving away too much of the game plan. What concerns you about them? What do they do well?
Oh, they have a lot of experience coming back. Ty
Right.
Clark, senior, he led them offensively last year. Caleb Moore is back again. I think he went all Ohio,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken. So they definitely have talent. They're extremely big up front. So it's definitely not going to be a pushover this week. That's
And
for sure.
I talked to Scott Spittler last night, and he said that. He said, they're going to come in here and they're going to give us everything we want. So I would imagine, despite the fact that you got a couple D4 schools coming up not too far down the road, all your attention is on Crestline this week. I would think.
Most definitely.
Right. It is Ashland at Madison. Grant, you saw Ashland last week. Madison is struggling a little bit. I mean, that offense is hard to deal with though when it's clicking.
Yeah, well, and also what impressed me, we talked about Ashland's offense in the second half last week. Their defense also turned up a notch. Ashland struck me as a really well-coached club. They struck me, and this is the first time I'd watched them play, also the first time I'd seen Mount Vernon play. But it seemed like they really came out in the second half and had, a game plan edge and a conditioning edge, which is rare against Mount Vernon. That's been their calling card this year. So I think that down the stretch, with the OCC, it's weird because you've got 7 teams in that conference.
Right.
Ashland, this was their first conference game last week. So the conference is still wide open, and there's teams that have one loss in that conference that can still win it.
Sure.
So it's going to be interesting. I think Ashland will be a big player, though, in that race.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you are you're headed to Centerburg this week?
Oh, yeah.
East Knox. Let's do a little Knox County football. The Bulldogs are unbeaten, is that right?
Yeah, down in Knox County, there's 3 teams, between Knox and Morrow, that are really fighting for the KMAC title right now. East Knox is one of them. Bulldogs are 5-0, and I mentioned this when we were talking in the first half of this show, but they've played 5 teams. Those teams' combined records are 2-23 right now.
Right.
So if that tells you anything. Now, at the same time, they've won those games by an average of 48 points per game.
Right.
So they're not letting teams into games. You got East Knox. You've got Northmore, who's 5-0. They're in Morrow County, obviously, but same conference. Highlands 4-1, arguably probably the most proven team of all those. And then knocking on the door is Centerburg, and Centerburg is 3-2. And you got Centerburg and East Knox playing each other on Friday night, and I'll be there. I think that Centerburg, they're down 2 of their playmakers this week. Donnell Marshall and Michael Kuhn are both out with injuries, so they're relying on their sophomore quarterback John Shisby, 5'9", $170, can run, can pass, but he's going to have to do a lot against East Knox defense that's given up like 30 points all year. So should be a great test for Centerburg, and also for East Knox. This is the first team they play with a winning record this year.
Right. Well, very good. I think that's everything we had planned for tonight. Jeb, we certainly appreciate you stopping by, and join us next week. We can't tell you who the guest will be just yet, but join us next week here on West 4th and Goal. Thanks.